We are counting down the top 10 ways Australia's geography sets it apart from every other country on Earth. From stunning extremes that shape how people live, to ancient secrets buried deep beneath the deserts, this list reveals the forces that make the world's only nation and continent truly unique. Expect record-breaking coastlines, dramatic climate paradoxes, and wildlife found nowhere else. Which geographic marvel ranks number 1? Let's begin, starting with number 10. Australia's shoreline wraps nearly 26,000 kilometres around a single, continuous landmass, longer than the drive from London to Beijing and back again, with room to spare. Yet no matter where you travel along this vast edge, you never cross an international border. One highway, known as Highway 1, loops more than 14,000 kilometres around the mainland, forming the world's longest national road and linking all major coastal cities in a single circuit. But the journey isn't just about distance. As you trace the coastline, your watch will jump 3 times. Australia alone is split into 3 standard time zones. Western Standard Time is Coordinated Universal Time plus 8 hours. Central Standard Time is plus 9.5 hours. And Eastern Standard Time is plus 10 hours. On a map, these zones slice the continent into neat vertical bands, each with its own internal clock, yet all within one sovereign nation. The sheer scale of the perimeter, combined with this internal clockwork, sets Australia apart. A country so large, its sunrise and sunset are never the same from one coast to the other. Australia covers nearly 7.7 million square kilometres, yet its 26 million people are packed onto a thin coastal band. More than 85% of Australians live within 50 kilometres of the sea, a population squeezed into a ring of cities and towns hugging the shoreline. The vast interior, known as the outback, stands in stark contrast. Here, population density drops below 3 people per square kilometre, and entire regions can go days without seeing another soul. Some cattle stations are so large they defy belief. Anna Creek Station in South Australia sprawls across 23,677 square kilometres, bigger than Slovenia. On properties like this, mustering cattle often means flying helicopters for hours over empty red plains, with the nearest neighbour sometimes 100 kilometres away. Life in these remote areas depends on careful planning and a tough spirit. But for most Australians, the interior is a place of legend more than daily reality. This sharp divide between crowded coasts and an almost empty heartland shapes the country's identity, setting the stage for the climate extremes that define life across the continent. Temperatures in Australia can reach levels that rival the hottest places on Earth. On January 13, 2022, the town of Onslow in Western Australia hit 50.7 degrees Celsius, tying a record set at Oodnadatta more than 60 years earlier. That kind of heat is not just a number, it shapes the land, the people, and the risks they face. In the heart of summer, dry winds sweep across the interior, turning forests and grasslands into tinder. When bushfires ignite under these conditions, they can become so intense they create their own weather. During the 2019 to 2020 Black Summer fires, more than 24 million hectares burned, an area larger than the entire United Kingdom. Some fires grew so fierce they generated pyrocumulonimbus clouds, thunderheads born from smoke and heat that unleashed lightning. That lightning sparked new blazes miles away and threw columns of ash into the stratosphere. Meteorologists and fire crews watched as the usual rules no longer applied. Wind shifted in seconds and fires leapt across containment lines. Australia's climate is shaped by cycles of drought, searing heat, and sudden storms, setting the stage for extremes that few other countries experience. In such an environment, survival often depends on finding water hidden deep below the surface. Number 7. the Great Artesian Basin. Hidden beneath the sun-baked heart of Australia lies a freshwater reserve of staggering proportions. The Great Artesian Basin stretches across 1.7 million square kilometres, covering nearly a quarter of the continent and forming one of the world's largest underground aquifers. Here, water seeps into sandstone layers along the eastern highlands, then travels westward through rock, a journey so slow that some droplets spend up to 2 million years underground before surfacing. In a land where rainfall is rare and rivers vanish into sand, this ancient water is nothing short of miraculous. Natural springs, like the legendary Dalhousie Springs, rise from the desert floor, creating green oases, where fish, snails and plants found nowhere else have survived for millennia. For Aboriginal communities, these springs are sacred, woven into stories and responsibilities that stretch back countless generations. When European settlers arrived, the basin's hidden bounty transformed the outback. Artesian bores drilled in the late 1800s brought water gushing to the surface, making pastoral stations and remote towns possible far from any river. But progress came at a cost. Uncontrolled bores wasted vast amounts of water, dropping underground pressures and threatening both springs and the cultures that depend on them. In recent decades, efforts to cap and control these bores have helped restore some balance, but every drop still matters. The Great Artesian Basin remains a lifeline, ancient, fragile and essential, quietly sustaining life where the surface offers little mercy. Ocean surrounds Australia on every side, the Indian Ocean to the west, the Pacific Ocean to the east, and a collection of tropical seas to the north. Yet for all that water, the nearest major neighbour sits more than 250 kilometres away. The stretch from Darwin across the Timor Sea to Indonesia is a blue expanse that, for most of history, has been as much a barrier as a bridge. This physical separation is not just a quirk of the map. It has shaped everything from ecosystems to government policy, and it left Australia isolated. Australia's long isolation has turned the country into a global biosecurity fortress. At airports and seaports, detector dogs sniff luggage, and X-ray machines scan even the smallest parcels. The Department of Agriculture, Fisheries and Forestry runs some of the strictest quarantine protocols on Earth. Fresh fruit, seeds, meat, even a bit of mud on hiking boots. Anything that might carry a pest or disease gets flagged, inspected or destroyed. The reason is simple. After tens of millions of years on its own, Australia's plants and animals have little defence against foreign invaders. A single hitchhiking insect or a handful of contaminated soil can threaten entire industries and native species. The 2013 interception of a giant African snail at a major port triggered a spike in inspections and a quiet overhaul of cargo screening procedures. This vigilance is not just bureaucracy, it is a way of life. The oceanic moat that once kept the world out now means every arrival is a potential threat, and every traveller is a guardian at the gate. Australia's isolation is more than a matter of distance. It is woven into daily routines and national identity, setting the stage for a continent where what gets in or does not can change everything. Australia stands alone as the only continent without a single active volcano on its mainland. While the rest of the world's continents are dotted with volcanic peaks, some spewing ash and lava and others quietly simmering, Australia's vast landmass is strikingly calm. The reason lies deep beneath the surface. The entire continent sits squarely in the middle of the Indo-Australian tectonic plate, far from the restless edges where most volcanoes are born. Plate boundaries, like those near Indonesia and the Pacific Rim, are the sites of earthquakes and eruptions. But in Australia, those boundaries are thousands of kilometres away. As a result, the land here has escaped the mountain building and volcanic upheaval that shapes so many other continents. There are exceptions, but they are far offshore. Heard Island and the McDonald Islands, remote Australian territories in the southern Indian Ocean, do have active volcanoes, including Big Ben, which occasionally sends plumes skyward. Yet these are tiny outposts, not part of the continental mainland. On the mainland itself, the last volcanic eruptions happened tens of thousands of years ago, leaving behind ancient lava fields and extinct cones that have been softened by time. This geological quiet has a profound effect on the landscape. Without the uplift and fresh rock of active volcanoes, Australia's surface has been left to the slow work of wind and water. Over millions of years, mountains have worn down and broad plains have taken their place. The result is a continent that is not only volcanically silent, but also the flattest on Earth, a land shaped more by erosion than eruption. Beneath the vast blue sky of Central Australia, Uluru rises from the plains, a sandstone monolith standing 348 metres above the red earth. Its surface, marked by deep grooves and folds, tells a story that stretches back more than 500 million years. The rock itself is made of arkose, a coarse sandstone rich in feldspar, deposited around 550 million years ago, when ancient mountains eroded and rivers dumped their load into an immense basin. Over time, these horizontal layers were buried, tilted, nearly upright, and slowly uncovered by relentless wind and rain. But Uluru's story reaches even deeper. In the far west, the Pilbara Craton holds rocks more than 3.8 billion years old, and within the Jack Hills, tiny zircon crystals have been dated to 4.4 billion years, among the oldest fragments of Earth's crust ever found. For the Anangu people, Uluru is not just stone, but a living cultural landscape. Every cave, ridge and waterhole is woven into Chukurpa, the lore and creation stories that guide life and responsibility. An Anangu elder has said that Uluru is their home, their story, their lore, and that they care for this place as their ancestors did. In 1985, legal title to Uluru was handed back to its traditional custodians, and since then, the park has been jointly managed with Parks Australia. For decades, visitors made the steep climb to its summit, despite Anangu requests to respect the site's sacred status. That changed on November 1st, 2019, when the climb was permanently closed, a decision that honoured both ancient tradition and a new era of respect. Uluru stands as a bridge between deep geological time and living culture, its silent presence reminding all who visit that this land holds stories far older than any city or nation. Nearly 70% of Australia is classified as arid or semi-arid, a land defined more by drought than by rain. Across the vast interior, annual rainfall often falls below 250 millimetres, leaving deserts like the Simpson and the Great Victoria stretching for hundreds of kilometres beneath a relentless sky. In these regions, rivers are rare and many flow only after a heavy storm, vanishing again into sand and salt flats. Yet the story of Australia's climate is not just one of emptiness. Along the continent's northeastern edge, the Daintree rainforest in Queensland receives more than 4,000 millimetres of rain each year. Ancient ferns and towering trees thrive there, in conditions as wet as any on Earth. The Daintree uplands are among the wettest places in Australia, forming a sharp green boundary against the dry heart of the continent. This contrast is visible on any rainfall map, a blue and purple fringe hugging the coast, fading quickly to yellow and red across the outback. The difference can be dramatic. A day's drive can take you from dripping rainforest to cracked red desert. These extremes shape every ecosystem. In the arid centre, plants and animals have adapted to survive on almost nothing, while the wet tropics harbour species found nowhere else. Even so, the dry interior is sometimes broken by sudden floods. In rare years, heavy rains in the north send water surging down ancient channels, turning parts of the outback into temporary inland seas. But for most of the continent, dryness is the rule, not the exception. Australia is the driest inhabited continent, a place where water, or the lack of it, defines the land, the wildlife, and the ways people live. Australia's living world is a direct result of its long isolation. After drifting away from Antarctica around 45 million years ago, the continent became an evolutionary laboratory, sealed off from the rest of the planet. The outcome is staggering. More than 80% of plant and animal species here exist nowhere else. Among mammals, about 87% are unique to Australia. For reptiles, that figure climbs even higher, 93%. Nowhere is this legacy more evident than in the monotremes. The platypus, with its duck-like bill and webbed feet, and the spiny echidna are the only living mammals that lay eggs. Both are found only in Australia and nearby New Guinea, relics of a time when mammals took a different evolutionary path. Alongside them, marsupials have flourished. Kangaroos, koalas, wombats, and the Tasmanian devil are familiar examples. Australia is home to the vast majority of the world's marsupials, a family that barely survives elsewhere. But this uniqueness comes with a price: vulnerability. Native animals evolved without many of the predators and competitors found on other continents. When the cane toad arrived in 1935, released in Queensland to control crop pests, the consequences were immediate and devastating. The toad's toxins proved deadly to goannas, quolls, and even crocodiles. These species had no natural defence against such a threat. Within decades, cane toads had spread across much of northern Australia, causing local extinctions and disrupting fragile food webs. This vulnerability is a constant reminder that Australia's extraordinary wildlife, shaped by millions of years of separation, depends on careful stewardship. In a country where more than 4 out of 5 species are found nowhere else, every new arrival, whether intentional or not, can tip the balance in ways no one can predict. Australia is the only country that is also an entire continent, a single landmass stretching across 7.7 million square kilometres. On a world map, it sits alone, ringed by ocean, with no land borders and no close rivals in its blend of scale and sovereignty. This is the 6th largest nation on Earth, yet the smallest of all continents, a paradox that sets it apart from every other country on the planet. Unlike continents shaped by recent mountain building, Australia's landscape is ancient and subdued. Its average elevation is just 330 metres above sea level, lower than any other continent. Where other lands boast towering peaks, Australia's highest point, Mount Kosciuszko, rises to only 2,228 metres. That is lower than the valleys in the Himalayas and dwarfed by the summits of the Andes or Rockies. The land here has been worn down over hundreds of millions of years, its mountains eroded to broad plateaus and rolling plains. This relentless levelling is why Australia is often called the flattest continent, a place where the horizon stretches unbroken for hundreds of kilometres. But Australia's story is also one of deep time and slow movement. Around 45 million years ago, the continent broke away from Antarctica and drifted northward into warmer latitudes. This journey through geological time set the stage for everything that followed: its climate, its isolation, and its extraordinary web of life. As the landmass sailed across the globe, it carried with it ancient soils, unique species, and a record of Earth's history written in stone. Off its northeastern coast lies another marvel, the Great Barrier Reef. Stretching 2,300 kilometres along Queensland's shoreline, this is the largest living structure on Earth, visible from space and home to thousands of species. The reef scale matches the continent itself, vast, complex, and found nowhere else. No other nation can claim such a combination, a single sovereign state occupying an entire continent, built on some of the oldest rocks on Earth, with a landscape so flat and stable that even its tallest mountain barely breaks the skyline. From the red deserts of the interior to the living mosaic of the reef, Australia stands alone, a geographic identity unmatched anywhere else on the planet. Across all 10 entries, one truth stands out. Australia's geography is defined by extreme contrasts, ancient landforms, vast emptiness, and total isolation. Yet it is bursting with life, found nowhere else on Earth. These forces do not just shape a landscape, they shape identity, resilience, and how Australians live today. Australia is a reminder that geography is not just background. Geography is destiny. Which fact changed your view of the continent? Let us know in the comments.